Makoto Kurebayashi groaned in frustration as he checked his phone. There were no new jobs for the week. His friends talked about his part-time housekeeping work, joking that he never seemed to get any clients. One of them said that people probably preferred hiring adults instead of students. Then the conversation changed when one boy started daydreaming about being taken care of by Hotta-sensei, a name Kurebayashi didn't recognize. His friend pointed ahead, saying the teacher they were talking about was right there. Rumiko Hotta-sensei walked by, immediately grabbing everyone's attention. Female students greeted her warmly, complimenting her cute shoes. Kurebayashi's friend whispered that she was very popular. He explained that Hotta-sensei was beautiful, cheerful, and made classes fun. She even had fans from other schools. But what made her most popular, he said, was her figure and adult charm. Kurebayashi stared in awe, mumbling about how big her chest was. His friend laughed and called him a closet pervert, which Kurebayashi quickly denied. Suddenly a calm voice interrupted them. It was Hotta-sensei, telling them they were being a little loud. Both boys bowed and apologized. She smiled and said it was fine as long as they understood. Up close, Kurebayashi was mesmerized. She was even prettier than he thought. Then he noticed something. One of the buttons on her blouse looked like it was about to pop off. He wanted to warn her but hesitated, afraid she'd think he was staring at her chest. As she waved goodbye and walked away, he froze, still unsure what to do. His friend teased him again, saying he must be into big breasts since he couldn't stop staring. Later that night, Kurebayashi was at home, steaming a shirt. He wondered if he should quit his part-time job altogether. He noticed his older brother Shinichi was late again and wished he wouldn't overwork himself. Just then, his phone rang. Thinking it was his brother, he answered, but a woman's voice spoke instead. She apologized for calling so late and asked if she was speaking to Kurebayashi-san. It wasn't his brother. It was Asama from the home help service. She began explaining the reason for her call, and Kurebayashi listened carefully. Soon after, he arrived at a large apartment building and stood outside room 403, nervous but excited for his first real job. He had accepted the last-minute request right away and wanted to do his best. He rang the bell, but no one answered. He started to worry that he had the wrong place. Checking his phone, he saw the client's name, Rumiko Hotta. He muttered, "Hotta," just as the door suddenly swung open, smacking him right in the face. Hotta-sensei stood in the doorway, startled. She gasped when she saw him on the ground and apologized, asking if he was hurt. Holding his head, Kurebayashi said he was fine. As she leaned closer, her loosely buttoned blouse fell open a little, giving him an unintended glimpse. Shocked, he jumped back, blurting out her name. Hotta-sensei froze too. Realizing he was wearing a Meijo high school uniform, she asked if he was her student. Panicking, Kurebayashi stood straight and introduced himself loudly as Makoto Kurebayashi from Meijo High School. Before he could finish, she grabbed his tie and pulled him inside, slamming the door shut behind them. Kurebayashi sat on the floor, dazed. Hotta-sensei scolded him, calling him an idiot for shouting her name like that. She said that if people thought she was inviting students over, she'd be fired immediately. Kurebayashi apologized again and again. Then she sighed, rubbing her temples. She said she was hungover, and that his yelling was making her headache worse. Kurebayashi looked at her closely. It really was Hotta-sensei. Her makeup was smudged, her hair messy, and her clothes wrinkled. He couldn't believe how different she looked from her perfect image at school. She complained that she couldn't find her phone, and Kurebayashi realized she must have made the cleaning request while drunk. When she finally found her phone, she panicked, realizing how bad this situation looked. She declared that she'd call the service and ask for someone else because having him there was too risky. Kurebayashi pleaded with her to let him stay, saying he'd waited a whole month for this first job. She refused at first, but then he mentioned that last-minute cancellations come with a fee. Hotta-sensei froze. A cancellation fee? She asked nervously. Kurebayashi explained that same-day cancellations cost 100% of the fee. She buried her face in her hands, calling it a nightmare. Finally, she sighed and gave in, saying he could do the job, but just for today. Kurebayashi was thrilled inside. Hotta-sensei explained that teachers didn't earn much, so wasting money wasn't an option. She told him he could repay her kindness by cleaning everything perfectly, and he eagerly agreed. She warned him that the place was pretty messy, but he confidently said he was used to cleaning up after his brother. She smiled faintly and invited him inside. The moment he stepped in, Kurebayashi froze. The apartment was a total disaster. Clothes, bottles, and trash were everywhere. Hotta-sensei laughed awkwardly and said, "Pretty bad, huh?" He could only nod. As Kurebayashi started cleaning, Hotta-sensei mentioned casually, "I'm about to take a bath. You can do whatever you want. Just don't touch my computer." Her words startled him a little. After a moment of hesitation, he blurted out something that had been bothering him since yesterday. Can you give me the bra you're wearing right now? Hotta froze, blinking in surprise. What? Are you going to sniff it or something? She asked suspiciously, giving him a sharp look. Flustered and caught off guard, Kuribayashi waved his hands frantically. No, it's not like that. The button came off, that's all. Hotta tilted her head, then smirked slightly. Oh, I see. I thought you were a pervert for a second there. He sighed in relief, muttering, Of course not. Well then, she said casually as she walked toward the bathroom, I'll give it to you later. Kuribayashi nodded awkwardly. As she stepped inside, he looked around the messy apartment and sighed. What a hopeless situation. He resumed cleaning, picking up clothes, throwing out trash, and folding the cardboard boxes. Then, as he lifted a towel, he froze. In his hand was Hotta-sensei's bra. Startled, he quickly rolled it up inside the towel, his face turning red. Why do women leave their underwear lying around like this? He mumbled to himself, trying to shake the thought away. Just as he began to calm down and focus on cleaning, the bathroom door opened. Here's the bra, a voice said. He turned around and for a moment his mind went blank. There stood Hotta-sensei, wrapped only in a towel, steam drifting around her. To him it looked almost heavenly. Hotta glanced at the pile of clothes. I guess this will do for today, she said calmly. Those scattered clothes over there have already been washed. I'll leave the rest to you. Right, Kuribayashi stammered, still dazed. Hotta smiled faintly before returning to the bathroom. As she relaxed in the warm bath, scrubbing her skin and humming softly, Kuribayashi continued cleaning the apartment, trying to pretend that his heart wasn't still racing. After some time, Kuribayashi looked proudly at the sparkling clean living room. He had focused so hard that time flew by. Suddenly, Hotta-sensei appeared again, startling him. His first thought was relief that she was finally dressed. She smiled, saying she was wearing shorts, and pulled up her shirt to prove it, though the shorts were very short. Kuribayashi quickly turned away, pretending to clean a spot on the floor, trying not to stare. He thought to himself that he had just managed to calm down. And now this. Then her stomach growled loudly. Embarrassed, she admitted she was hungry. Luckily, Kuribayashi had already made dinner. Her eyes lit up when she saw the pickled vegetables. She praised his cooking and asked how he knew she liked them. He reminded her that she had written it in her service form. As she took her first bite, Kuribayashi nervously waited for her reaction. The moment Hotta-sensei tasted the food, a tear rolled down her cheek. Kuribayashi panicked, thinking the food must have been terrible. He rushed to take the plate away, but Hotta grabbed his hand firmly to stop him. She explained softly that the taste reminded her of her grandmother's pickled vegetables, something she thought she'd never get to eat again. The memories were precious to her. Kuribayashi relaxed a little, realizing she was crying out of happiness, not disappointment. Holding his hand tightly, Hotta asked in an emotional voice if his hands were her grandma's. Startled, Kuribayashi shouted his name in confusion. She quickly apologized for getting carried away, while he tried to calm himself. Hotta looked at him thoughtfully. She began to list his good qualities. He was hardworking, sincere, and considerate. She praised his cooking skills and said his pickled vegetables were amazing. Then she called out his name, getting his full attention. She suddenly pointed at him and made a bold announcement. She had decided to make him her personal housekeeper. Kuribayashi couldn't believe what he just heard and asked if she was serious. She nodded, smiling. He eagerly agreed, saying he would accept any conditions she set. Hotta smiled knowingly, picked up a sheet of paper, and began writing. She drafted a formal 12-clause agreement. When she finished, she proudly handed it to him. Kuribayashi was stunned by how long and detailed it was. After making sure he had read it, she told him to sign it to make it official. With a nervous click of his pen, Kuribayashi signed the contract, already wondering what he had just gotten himself into. Hotta-sensei was overjoyed, exclaiming that she could now eat his pickled vegetables every day. Kuribayashi laughed nervously and promised to make her plenty. As he watched her smile, he couldn't help thinking how cute she was. But before he could get too comfortable, her face suddenly turned serious. She leaned forward and said in a low, threatening voice that if he broke the contract, she would drag him down with her. Kuribayashi froze, understanding that she meant they would go down together. He nodded fearfully. Everything began to feel unreal, like a dream. In a teasing, seductive tone, Hotta called his name and told him to keep their relationship a secret. Kuribayashi blushed and stammered her title in response, completely flustered. He tried to back away, saying she was too close. Hotta leaned in even closer, asking if he was sure he wouldn't break their deal. He begged her to please put some clothes on. She moved inches from his face, repeating her warning. Suddenly, his alarm clock blared. Kuribayashi woke up in bed, gasping. It had all been a dream. He sat there, sweating, wondering what kind of crazy dream that was. At school later that morning, a friend pointed out that he looked exhausted for a Monday. Kuribayashi said he'd had a strange dream, though secretly he admitted it was actually a pretty great one. He confessed that he felt guilty about it, but his friend didn't understand why. 2 days had passed since his first housekeeping visit to Hotta Sensei's apartment, and he still couldn't shake the feeling that the whole thing might not have been real. A chilling thought hit him. What if the entire visit had just been part of his dream? He quickly shook his head, refusing to believe it. Just then, his heart skipped a beat. Down the hallway, he saw Hotta Sensei walking gracefully through the corridor, greeting students with her usual bright smile. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Kuribayashi panicked. He spun around and sprinted in the opposite direction. He tried to calm down by remembering her messy, hungover look from the apartment, but instead he kept picturing the version from his dream, which only made things worse. His friend noticed his strange behavior and asked what was wrong. Kuribayashi collapsed in the hallway, wheezing and red-faced. Desperate to control himself, he decided the only solution was to avoid looking at her entirely. His friend assumed the problem was solved, but Kuribayashi knew it was far from over. However, avoiding her turned out to be impossible. No matter where he went, he saw her. He realized it was because she was just too eye-catching. Her beauty and energy stood out everywhere. He wondered why he hadn't noticed her before last week. Now he understood. Her face, figure, and charm made her impossible to ignore. He thought about how different she was at home. The messy, lazy side compared to her perfect school image. He took a deep breath, telling himself to get it together before she noticed him acting weird. But before he could leave, someone grabbed his arm and yanked him into an empty room. The door slammed shut. Inside, Hotta Sensei had him pinned against a file cabinet with her leg. Her eyes blazed as she demanded to know why he kept staring at her. She reminded him they weren't supposed to have any contact at school and said she'd cancel their contract if he thought an apology was enough. Flustered, Kuribayashi couldn't tell her the truth about his dream, so he blurted out that he stared because she was so beautiful. Hotta was taken aback, then smiled slightly. She accepted his answer, saying it was only natural for people to be drawn to beautiful things. Leaning close, she warned him that while she'd forgive him this time, he knew what would happen if he slipped up again. She reminded him that if anyone found out about their connection, she would take him down with her. Then she stepped back and told him to leave. The door slammed shut behind him. Kuribayashi stood frozen, trembling. He couldn't believe what had just happened. She had wall-slammed him with her leg. When he finally returned to the classroom, his friend greeted him casually, unaware of the chaos he just survived. Kuribayashi's friend asks what took him so long. He explains that he had a rough morning, then learns that homeroom hasn't started yet because the teacher is late. Just as he says this, a teacher walks in. The classroom fills with chatter while Kuribayashi promises himself he'll get it together starting tomorrow. The teacher quiets everyone and announces that their homeroom teacher, Komura-sensei, had to return to his hometown for a while. Then he introduces their new assistant homeroom teacher, Rumiko Hotta-sensei. She steps up and greets the class politely. Kuribayashi is stunned. He thinks she must have known this was his class, but one look at Hotta-sensei's shocked face tells him she had no idea either. Later, Kuribayashi hurries through the streets, realizing it took him longer than expected to get ready. He thinks about how Hotta-sensei became his assistant homeroom teacher just a week ago. He remembers how pale she looked when she first saw him at school, though she quickly recovered her composure. Despite his own awkwardness, her strict but kind text message helped him refocus.
Hey guys, sorry for mid-editing, but I noticed a lot of you are watching my videos without subscribing. Our subscribe ratio is literally close to 0. I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Thanks. Now, back to the recap.
He arrives at her apartment for his second housekeeping session. When she opens the door, Kuribayashi freezes, surprised by what she's wearing. He stammers a greeting and asks about her outfit. Cheerfully, she explains that she's doing yoga for the first time in a while. He recalls it's that exercise with fancy stretches. She admits she started again because she's gained a little weight. Telling him not to mind her, she says to get to work, and he agrees. While Kuribayashi cleans, Hotta-sensei struggles with her yoga poses, groaning at how hard they are. The sounds she makes make it impossible for him to focus. Even when he looks away, her voice alone distracts him. Eventually, she collapses onto the mat, saying she's too stiff to continue. Thinking she's finished, Kuribayashi asks brightly if the session's over, but instead she calls him over. Confused, he approaches, and she asks him to help push her lower back to deepen her stretch. Hesitantly, he places his hands on her, as she tells him to press a bit lower and harder. The closeness overwhelms him. He can feel her body heat through his hands. Flustered, he tries to excuse himself and get back to cleaning, but she refuses. Laughing, she tells him to join her for the next 30 minutes. For the next half hour, Kuribayashi becomes her reluctant yoga assistant, helping her stretch and fix her form through a series of difficult and sometimes awkward poses. Afterward, Hotta-sensei stretches happily, saying how refreshed and light she feels. She thanks Kuribayashi for his help, completely unaware of how exhausted he is. He silently vows never to help with yoga again. Leaning in with a smile, she says having a partner makes it easier and asks if he'll help again sometime. Flustered, he blurts out a quick no, then adds that he'll only do it if he can wear earplugs and gloves, leaving her puzzled. Later, as school ends, students notice Kuribayashi is already gone, as usual. He, however, knows exactly where he is. He finds a key left in a door and uses it to step onto the school rooftop. The open view fills him with joy. He shouts how amazing it feels to be up there. Suddenly, a voice scolds him for being on the roof. Startled, he apologizes and sees Hotta-sensei standing there. Switching to her casual tone, she asks how he got out there. He explains someone left a key in the door. Realizing she must have left it behind earlier, she thanks him when he returns it. She tells him to head back to class since the rooftop is her lunch spot. As she turns to leave, Kuribayashi hesitantly asks if he can eat there too. Jokingly, she asks if he's a loner, and he quickly denies it. He says he just wanted to read while he eats. Usually he eats on the stairs, but today he wanted to try the rooftop. It's nice up there, though the wind's a bit strong. When she asks what he's eating, he shows her his lunch, and she claims she's already eaten, though she soon pulls out a sandwich, scone, croissant, and curry bun. Kuribayashi stares, pointing out she seems hungrier than just peckish. She insists her lunchbox is too small and that getting a bigger one would ruin her image. Her attention suddenly locks onto the delicious food in his lunchbox. Unable to resist, she leans in close, eyes sparkling. Her chest presses against him, making him flustered. To distract himself, he offers her one of his rice balls. Surprised, she asks if he's serious, and he tells her to take it. He's got a spare, and it's better for her. She takes a bite and immediately lights up, saying how amazing it tastes. Heart-pounding, Kuribayashi accidentally blurts out that he loves her cooking. As she happily praises the rice ball, he silently wonders how anyone can handle her when she acts like that. He insists he should pay her back, but she tells him it's fine. She's the one who took food from a growing teen. Still, he promises to find a way to repay her by his next cleaning session. She comments that he's unusually calm for someone his age. Before he can deny it, a strong gust of wind suddenly blows past, lifting her dress. Panicking, she tries to hold it down, her face red. Kuribayashi, equally embarrassed, mutters about the annoying wind messing up his hair. Then, flustered but trying to act cool, he says she doesn't owe him anything. She's already repaid him, and insists he's not calm at all, leaving Hotta-sensei completely confused. Hotta-sensei watches with a hungry, excited look as Kuribayashi cooks. He calmly tells her she's drooling, snapping her out of her trance. She gushes about how excited she is, and he tells her to wait, but she insists on staying to watch. He can feel her intense gaze on him, making it hard to focus. Suddenly, she gets an idea. If she helps, they can eat faster. She tells him to wait a moment, and he nods, confused but agreeing. After Kuribayashi sets the batter aside to rest, Hotta-sensei comes back, ready to assist. Her appearance in an apron shocks him. For a split second, he panics, thinking she's wearing nothing underneath before realizing her clothes are just hidden. She twirls and asks how the apron looks. Kuribayashi nervously compliments her, and she smiles, clearly pleased. Flustered, he quickly hands her a towel and tries to focus on the bowl in front of him. When she asks what he's doing, he awkwardly changes the subject and gives her the next step, to mix the sugar and milk. As they work, Hotta-sensei comments that he must enjoy cooking since he makes his own lunches. He admits that his lunches are just frozen meals, shocking her. Ignoring her reaction, he becomes serious, saying you can't be careless with measurements when baking. Changing the topic, she confirms her job is to whip the cream. Kuribayashi is surprised she doesn't own a hand mixer. He offers to grab his from home, but she stops him, proudly holding up a whisk instead. She declares she'll do it by hand. Kuribayashi looks doubtful, but she tells him to stop nagging. Though confident at first, it doesn't take long before she's sweating and exhausted. Seeing how tired she is, Kuribayashi asks if she's okay. She stubbornly refuses his help and insists she can do it. While she struggles, he searches online and finds a tip involving ice water. He goes to fetch some, but as he reaches for the ice, he slips and falls, right into Hotta-sensei. They crash to the floor together. Kuribayashi immediately asks if she's hurt. She shakes her head and softly apologizes, sitting on the floor covered in spilled cream. With a defeated look, she admits she messed up. Determined, Kuribayashi suddenly dashes out of the apartment, telling her to go clean up. Later, using the ice water trick, Hotta-sensei easily whips the cream. Kuribayashi explains that was his plan all along. At the school library, Kurebayashi and his friends split up to find books for their project. Once they scatter, he walks through the aisles, happy to be there, even thinking about borrowing a book for himself. He heads toward the science section, believing it's the right place. As he turns into the aisle, he freezes. Hotta-sensei is on a small ladder, reaching for a book. With a nervous sweat, he realizes they've run into each other again. Remembering their agreement not to talk at school, he debates whether to greet her or sneak past quietly. Hotta-sensei stretches for a book just out of reach when she suddenly senses someone below. She flinches, startling Kurebayashi, who yelps. Looking down, she spots him and says his name. Caught, he awkwardly greets her, realizing his plan to stay unnoticed has failed. Hotta-sensei smiles brightly and asks if she can help him with it. Kurebayashi feels conflicted. She's acting friendly, even though they agreed not to interact at school. After confirming no one else is around, her cheerful expression drops. She glares at him, leans close, and warns him not to talk to her without a reason. Panicked, he blurts out that he just needed the book trolley. Her glare softens. She sighs and tells him he should have just said so. She explains she used the books on the trolley for her class materials and that he showed up just in time to help her put them away. As they stack the books, he asks why she has so many. He remarks that she tends to let things pile up, just like her apartment. She blinks innocently and asks if that's true. Then she argues that cleaning up a big mess all at once feels more satisfying. Kurebayashi mutters that he's the one who ends up cleaning anyway. Casually, she reminds him that he left his jacket at her place and can pick it up on Saturday. Before he can respond, they hear voices. His friends are nearby, joking about whether he's hanging out with a girl or got a girlfriend. Panicking, Hotta-sensei grabs him and pulls him down to hide. One of his friends peeks into the aisle, calling his name, but finds no one. As they leave, one of them sighs about not having a girlfriend. Meanwhile, Kurebayashi is hidden close to Hotta-sensei, practically pressed against her. The moment feels awkwardly intimate. She leans down and whispers that his friends are gone. His face turns bright red as he apologizes, flustered and unable to meet her eyes. Seeing his expression, Hotta-sensei grows concerned, asking if he's crying or if she pulled him too hard. He insists he's fine. Just then, one of his friends walks back and finds him looking overheated and embarrassed, completely misreading the situation. That evening, a weather report warns of heavy rain. At Hotta-sensei's apartment, Kurebayashi plans to make potato salad, but realizes they're out of mayonnaise. From the couch, Hotta-sensei calls to him. He tells her he's heading to the store, and she asks him to buy that thing for her. She struggles to describe it, a yellow, crunchy vegetable she once ate at a cafe, but shoots down every guess he makes. Frustrated, she insists he get that crunchy yellow thing, but he still has no idea what she means. When he asks for more details, she gets irritated. Then, out of nowhere, she declares that for today, he'll be her little brother. Kurebayashi freezes in confusion. She explains that during this outing, he must address her casually as Ne-chan instead of sensei. Leaning in close, she smiles and asks if he understands, calling him by his first name, Makoto. Makoto Kurebayashi is completely flustered by Hotta-sensei's sudden closeness and strange request. As they head out together, he panics inside, wondering what kind of roleplay this is supposed to be. At the supermarket, Hotta-sensei scans the produce section, but can't find the vegetables she wants. Kurebayashi watches her, admiring her disguise, glasses and pigtails. He's impressed by how different she looks. Suddenly, she calls his name, startling him. Other shoppers glance at her, thinking she's beautiful. He almost calls her Sen, but she quickly covers his mouth and reminds him not to call her that. He awkwardly changes it to Ni-chan. Hotta-sensei picks up a yellow bell pepper and a mango, thinking one of them might be it. Kurebayashi thinks her guesses are too fancy. He tells her she should remember what she ate, but she brushes him off, insisting it could be either one. Then he spots something else and points it out. It's a kalinki squash, a type of pumpkin. Hotta-sensei shakes her head, saying she ate the vegetable raw, and that's impossible for pumpkin. Kurebayashi suggests asking a store clerk, but she refuses, saying it's too embarrassing. He points out there's a clerk right there, but she argues that no proper adult would ask such a vague question. While they argue, a clerk approaches. Having overheard them, he confirms they're looking for a kalinki squash. He explains it's a kind of pumpkin that can be eaten raw because the rind has no smell and can be sliced thin. Kurebayashi is surprised. Hotta-sensei beams with satisfaction. She thanks the clerk, laughingly claiming she just wanted her little brother to practice talking to people. The clerk smiles and tells Kurebayashi he must be proud of his pretty sister, as rain starts pouring outside. Soaked on the way home, Kurebayashi wonders why they even brought an umbrella. Hotta-sensei complains that her shoes are soggy. Kurebayashi kindly offers to run her a bath. When they reach home, still dripping wet, she immediately starts taking off her soaked clothes. Kurabayashi blushes when he sees her bra through her wet shirt. She calls his name, snapping him out of his thoughts, and smiles. She says she enjoyed pretending to be siblings because she's an only child and always wanted a brother. Kurabayashi feels guilty, realizing he was too focused on how she looked rather than the moment itself. The next day, Makoto Kurabayashi wakes up late, stretching and groaning. When he sees it's almost noon, he decides to make lunch and wonders if Hotta-sensei is awake yet. Meanwhile, Hotta-sensei wakes up with a big yawn. Her messy apartment greets her, and she instinctively wonders why Kurabayashi hasn't cleaned. Then she remembers it's exam week, and he won't come until next week. Used to a tidy home now, the mess makes her restless. With determination, she decides to clean. She tells herself she's not hopeless at it, and that clearing the floor will make a difference. She grabs the vacuum, removes the nozzle, and starts cleaning every corner. But her plan quickly goes wrong. The curtain gets sucked into the vacuum. She panics, yelling about the curtain, and starts pulling hard without turning the machine off. With one strong tug, the nozzle pops free and flies into a stack of books. She dives forward to catch them and manages to stop them from falling. But then the vacuum tips over, spilling dust all over the floor. Hotta-sensei sighs in defeat. She claps her hands and decides to clean the rest later. To avoid getting her clothes wet, she pulls off her leggings, ties up her hair, and declares she's ready to go again. Feeling motivated, she decides to clean the bathroom next. She scrubs away happily, humming to herself. Lost in the task, she kneels in a sea of soap suds, cleaning every corner. Then she decides to clean the ceiling too. But when she steps on a stool, she slips on the wet floor and falls with a loud thud. Soaked and frustrated, she cries out that even her panties are wet. Fed up, she decides to just take a bath. After her bath, she rewards herself with a cold beer, sighing at how good it tastes. There's nothing like a beer after some exercise, she says. For lunch, she finds the frozen curry and rice that Kurabayashi left her. She tosses a boiled egg on top, feeling proud of her idea. She tells herself she'll try vacuuming again after lunch. But when she runs the microwave, it suddenly explodes. A week later, Kurabayashi visits again and finds the microwave completely splattered. He sighs and asks if she seriously put a whole egg inside. With exam week finally over, the students are relaxed and cheerful. As Makoto's friends plan to hang out, he tells his friend Ryohei that he can't go because he has work. Ryohei complains that Makoto is never around anymore. Then, a blonde girl excitedly calls out to Makoto. Ryohei blushes immediately, while Makoto looks confused. He doesn't recognize her. The girl introduces herself as Haru Konishi, his childhood neighbor from when they were 5. Makoto is shocked to learn she just transferred to their school. Ryohei teases him, asking how he could forget such a cute childhood friend. Haru laughs, happy to hear that she's grown up well. Ryohei eagerly pushes Makoto to introduce him. Haru greets him warmly. As they walk, they run into Hotta-sensei, who smiles and tells them to get home safely. Ryohei whispers that she looks extra radiant and guesses she's going out for drinks. Makoto watches her leave, hoping she won't get a hangover. Haru comments on how pretty she is. Then, out of nowhere, Haru asks Makoto if he's still a boob man. He chokes in shock. She reminds him of when he was in kindergarten. He once said his favorite teacher was Mayumi-sensei because her boobs were big and soft. Mortified, Makoto turns red as Ryohei and Haru laugh. They tease him, saying that's probably why he gets so awkward around Hotta-sensei. Haru playfully suggests it's because of her impressive figure. After Ryohei leaves, Haru leads Makoto to a nearby park, feeling nostalgic about their childhood. They sit on the swings, and Haru explains that her family moved 3 times after leaving their old neighborhood. It was tough for her father, who works as a banker. Haru then asks Makoto if he has a girlfriend or someone he likes. Flustered, Makoto blurts out Hotta-sensei's name before he can stop himself. Realizing what he said, he quickly tries to explain that it's not romantic. He just admires her because she's the most beautiful person he's ever met. He adds nervously that her figure has nothing to do with it. Smiling slyly, Haru asks if that means he could fall for someone flat-chested instead. Makoto stammers in confusion. Seeing how embarrassed he is, she laughs and says she's just kidding, then stands up on her swing. Haru recalls how, when they were kids, they used to see who could jump the farthest from the swings. Excited, she suggests they do it again. Makoto agrees but quickly panics when she starts to count down. He shouts for her to stop, worried about her uniform, but it's too late. She jumps on 3. For a moment, Makoto gets a full view from behind as she soars through the air. She lands awkwardly and blushes, turning back to ask shyly if he saw anything. Mortified, Makoto admits to himself that he definitely saw her white panties. He apologizes over and over as Haru hides her red face. Trying to move past the awkward moment, Makoto suggests they go home. but Haru invites him over instead. She happily reveals that her family moved back into their old house. They're neighbors again. Despite her cheerful smile, Haru's thoughts darken. Inside, she feels completely thrown off by that woman, Hotta. For 10 years, she had eyes only for Makoto. Her plan was simple: come back, make him fall in love, and marry him. But now she sees Hotta-sensei, a teacher with a face and body that seemed too perfect, as a huge rival. She worries that Makoto already has feelings for Hotta, who is exactly his type. Her jealous thoughts are interrupted when Makoto, noticing her blank stare, asks if she's okay. Haru snaps out of it, her heart melting at how cute he looks, while shyly avoiding her gaze. To her, he's still the same gentle, sweet boy from 10 years ago. She decides he just needs a little push to start seeing her as a girl again. Determined, Haru swears she won't let some old woman steal him. Makoto is hers. Later, at Hotta-sensei's apartment, she and Makoto are suddenly interrupted by the arrival of a young woman, Haru. She bursts in, calling Makoto's name in shock. Caught off guard, Makoto freezes, unsure what to do. Hotta-sensei, confused, asks what's going on. Haru storms toward them, demanding to know why Makoto is with a teacher from his school. Makoto stammers that there's a good reason. She accuses him of lying about working that day, but he denies it. Haru grabs him by the arm and drags him inside while shouting. Annoyed, Hotta-sensei tells them to stop yelling in front of her door. Once inside, Haru proudly introduces herself as Makoto's very close childhood friend. Hotta crosses her arms and asks Makoto for an explanation. Haru says she came because she was worried he'd lied to her. Then she realizes who she's talking to, Hotta-sensei, the teacher she saw outside the school gates. When Haru demands to know why Makoto is at her place, Hotta calmly explains that he works for her as a housekeeper. Makoto nervously wonders if it's okay to admit that, but Hotta says there's no point in hiding it. Haru clenches her fists and shouts that she doesn't believe it. Tears fill her eyes as she insists she won't fall for such a stupid lie, accusing them of secretly dating. But then she looks around the messy apartment and freezes. As she takes in the piles of clutter and the smell of beer, her confidence fades. Maybe they are telling the truth. Disgusted, she mutters that it's hard to believe this pigsty belongs to a woman. Makoto notes that there are at least fewer beer cans than last week. Hotta awkwardly says she didn't drink much lately. Haru sighs. She admits that while Hotta is beautiful, she definitely needs a housekeeper. Feeling relieved, Haru convinces herself that no matter how attractive Hotta is, Makoto could never see her as a woman while she lives like this. Trying to lighten the mood, she asks Makoto what he's making for dinner. When he mentions he also baked maple scones for dessert, Haru's excitement returns. But then, she glances between them and comments that they look like newlyweds. Turning to Hotta, she asks why she keeps hiring Makoto, warning that he'll get in trouble if someone finds out. Hotta admits she had planned to replace him after the first time, but his cooking and cleaning skills were too good to give up. She praises him enthusiastically, making Makoto blush and Haru grind her teeth in frustration. Hotta grabs his hand, smiling as she tells him his pickled vegetables taste just like her grandmother's. Makoto blushes even harder. Haru's eyes widen in disbelief. Hotta's hand is pressed right against her chest. Furious, Haru slams her hands on the table. She wobbles over with a menacing smile and tells Hotta they need to talk privately. She orders Makoto to sit still and clean up while she drags Hotta into another room. Inside, Hotta asks what this is all about. Haru's mind races. She knows Makoto has a weakness for big breasts. Watching Hotta adjust her strap, Haru stares in disbelief at how much they bounce. Suspicious, she blurts out, "Did you get a boob job?" She reasons that maybe they're fake, and if so, Makoto will lose interest. Without warning, Haru reaches out and grabs Hotta-sensei's chest. Hotta freezes in shock. Then, completely calm, she says that since Haru wouldn't stop staring, she figured she wanted to touch them. She adds that her classmates used to grope them all the time back in school. From the kitchen, Makoto hears noise and sighs, thinking they're being loud again. He peeks into the room and awkwardly asks if he can use the washing machine. As Hotta laughs, Haru's eyes go wide. The breasts are real, soft, plump, and firm all at once. Both women suddenly turn red when they realize Makoto has just seen them. Makoto freezes, apologizes immediately, and bolts out of the room. Later, while vacuuming, Makoto apologizes to Haru, saying he never knew she liked girls. Haru is left speechless, while Hotta-sensei happily eats a snack. The chapter ends with Haru sitting alone, defeated, wondering how breasts can even get that big. A teacher calls out to the students, telling them to clean the pool area until it shines. Kurobayashi is surprised when his friends admit they only asked him to help because they heard Hotta-sensei would be there. When Hotta-sensei appears, some students get excited, but others look disappointed by her outfit. One boy complains that pools are for swimsuits, not tracksuits. Kurabayashi tries to explain why she's dressed that way, but the boys stay disappointed since she's covered from head to toe. He admits to himself that Hotta sensei, who usually wears light clothes, is rarely this modest. One friend decides they should at least try to get her to smile. Her bright smile and cheerful words instantly lift their spirits. Encouraged by her, the boys shout with excitement and get to work, which makes Kurabayashi laugh. The students scrub the pool deck clean. When the teacher says it's time to rinse, the task quickly turns into a wild water fight as they play with the powerful hose. After everyone leaves, Kurabayashi finishes putting away the cleaning tools, grumbling about losing the game that stuck him with extra chores. Suddenly, Hotta-sensei shows up and asks if anyone is still there. When she learns it's just the two of them, she cheerfully says it's her time, confusing him. Without warning, she starts to pull down her pants. Shocked, Kurabayashi panics and shouts for her to stop. She casually unzips her jacket and asks what's wrong. Kurabayashi, flustered, says he's still there. She calmly replies that she knows. She's just hot in her tracksuit. Hotta-sensei then reveals a swimsuit underneath, complaining that she got too sweaty. Kurabayashi is left speechless as she proudly poses. She explains that her plan was to enjoy a swim in the freshly cleaned pool. Kurabayashi protests, but she innocently asks why she shouldn't. Then she looks at the empty pool and realizes it has no water. She sadly explains her failed master plan, and Kurabayashi finally understands why she wore such warm clothes. While she mourns her ruined swimsuit debut, Kurabayashi secretly feels lucky that he lost at rock, paper, scissors. His eyes fall on the coiled hose and he suddenly gets an idea. He calls out to Hotta-sensei and suggests they play with the hose instead. She loves the idea immediately. He turns on the water and a strong stream shoots out. Laughing, she challenges him to a water fight. They splash each other wildly, laughing and shouting until they're both soaked. Afterward, they collapse on the pool deck, tired but happy. Hotta-sensei laughs about how wet she is, while Kurabayashi worries she'll catch a cold. She smiles and says the moment reminds her of her own teenage summers. She turns to him with a warm smile and thanks him sincerely for the fun. Blushing, Kurabayashi brushes it off, but she looks pleased. He warns her again about catching a cold, and sure enough, the next day, she's absent from class with one. Later at home, Hotta-sensei sneezes loudly while sitting in a shirt holding her stomach. Kurabayashi, remembering their water fight, feels guilty and decides to visit her. When he rings the bell, no one answers. Worried, he's about to leave when the door opens. Hotta-sensei, looking pale and weak, appears. She asks why he's there. He explains he brought supplies since she's sick. She grumbles that it's unfair how easily young people stay healthy, but thanks him anyway. When she suddenly sways, Kurabayashi catches her and helps her to bed. He notices how messy her apartment is and checks her temperature. She has a high fever. Concerned, he asks if she's seen a doctor. Overwhelmed, Hotta-sensei starts crying, upset about missing work. Kurabayashi, startled, tries to calm her down, saying her fever must be making her emotional. Through tears, she asks if he's telling the truth that everyone is worried. He gently assures her that they are, and that she just needs to rest and recover. She nods weakly, moved by his kindness. Seeing the softer side of her, Kurabayashi finds her even more endearing. When she admits she hasn't eaten, he offers to make her rice porridge. As he leaves to cook, she recalls a warm childhood memory of her grandmother caring for her when she was sick. Kurabayashi soon returns with the meal and tells her it's ready. She thanks him, but is too weak to eat. He notices and insists on feeding her. He blows on each spoonful to cool it and gently brings it to her lips. Blushing and flustered, Hotta-sensei quietly opens her mouth and accepts the food. She complains that it's bland, but he reminds her that's how food for sick people should taste. He gives her some pickles to go with it. When she finishes eating most of the meal, he's relieved. He tells her he'll grab her medicine and a change of clothes, then steps out, closing the door behind him. When Makoto is finally alone, he lets out a long sigh. The whole experience feels like too much for him to handle. He scolds himself for having impure thoughts about someone who was sick and hopes Hotta-sensei didn't notice. From her room, Hotta-sensei hears his strange cries and wonders what on earth he's doing. Later, she wakes up feeling much better and stretches with a yawn. When she checks the clock, she's shocked by how long she slept. She guesses that Kurabayashi must have gone home while she was resting. Then she looks around and is amazed. Her entire apartment is spotless. She quickly realizes he must have cleaned it for her. Smiling, she thinks about how hardworking he is. On the fridge, she spots a note he left behind. It says, "Get well soon. I left you some ice cream." Reading it makes her smile warmly. She opens the freezer and finds 3 types of ice cream. Laughing softly, she thinks he might actually be too considerate. Sitting happily on the floor, she enjoys the ice cream he left for her. Later, Kurabayashi stands in front of an apartment door and rings the bell. When it opens, he greets the person cheerfully with a, "Good morning, Hotta-sensei." But the woman who opens the door isn't her. Confused, she asks for his name. Panicking, Makoto apologizes, thinking he's at the wrong apartment. But the number 403 matches. The woman suddenly realizes something and asks if he's Rumiko's boyfriend. Makoto blushes and denies it immediately, explaining he's her part-time housekeeper. She looks surprised. Inside, Hotta-sensei can be heard singing in the shower. The woman explains that she stayed the night because she and Rumiko were drinking together. She introduces herself as Matsuri Takagi, Rumiko's childhood friend. Makoto introduces himself and says he's been working for Hotta-sensei since April. Matsuri laughs, saying that must be why the apartment looks so clean now. Relieved, Makoto thinks to himself that he's glad he didn't accidentally call Hotta-sensei by her first name. Matsuri studies him closely. She says he looks like a high schooler, but he quickly clarifies that he's a first-year college student. Deciding to focus on work, he starts vacuuming. But he soon notices that Matsuri is still staring at him. Before he can react, she leans close and suddenly blows into his ear. Makoto yelps in surprise, and she giggles, saying she just wanted to tease him. Flustered, he tries to ignore her. Matsuri comments that he's cute and asks if he's popular with girls. Then, out of nowhere, she offers her lap for him to rest on, which he quickly refuses. As he keeps cleaning, she playfully leans closer again. Then she suddenly asks what kind of underwear Rumiko wears. Embarrassed, Makoto insists he never looks. He silently prays that Hotta-sensei will come out of the bathroom soon. Matsuri keeps teasing, asking if seeing Rumiko makes him excited. She mentions how defenseless Rumiko is when she's off work, implying it must be tempting. Makoto stammers that he's just there to earn money, but she ignores him and suddenly pushes him down onto the sofa. Leaning over him, she asks if he'd like doing this sort of thing with an older woman. He blurts out a panicked, "No!" before shouting that, yes, he likes big chests, but he'd never do anything that would ruin both his and Hotta-sensei's lives. Realizing what he just said out loud, Makoto freezes in horror. Matsuri bursts out laughing, clearly amused by his honesty. Grinning, she says it's funny how he thinks a single mistake could ruin everything. Mortified, Makoto buries his face in his hands, calling himself an idiot. Satisfied, Matsuri says she's learned something interesting and decides to leave. She waves goodbye and tells him to give her regards to Rumiko. With a knowing smile, she assures him that his secret is safe with her. Right as Matsuri steps out, Hotta-sensei comes out of the bathroom wearing only a towel. Startled, Makoto asks why she's like that. She shrugs and says she forgot her underwear. What else was she supposed to do? By Monday, Makoto is still haunted by the whole situation. He hasn't been able to talk to Hotta-sensei about any of it, and the stress has left him pale and exhausted. Feeling sick, he decides to visit the school nurse. The nurse looks at him and immediately notices his dark eye circle. She asks what's wrong. He says it's nothing serious, but she insists on listening. Then she suddenly asks if his problem involves being nervous about a relationship that could ruin his life. Makoto freezes. She goes on, asking if he often gets hot and flustered easily, making him jump in shock. He blurts out, asking if Rumiko told her about that. The nurse smiles, takes off her glasses, and says he's just too easy to tease. Makoto stares in horror as he finally realizes the nurse is Matsuri Takagi. She grins and confirms that he's finally figured it out. At that exact moment, Hotta-sensei is in her classroom and suddenly wonders if she ever mentioned to Kuribayashi that Matsuri works as the school nurse. Later, Makoto Kuribayashi finds himself standing in a crowded street, thinking about how busy it is. Someone suddenly hands him an ice cream cone. It's Haru, smiling brightly. She says she bought the ice cream because it looked tasty. Makoto offers to pay her back, but she refuses, saying it's her treat to thank him for coming along. He shyly agrees. When he asks if she needs to buy a reference book, she laughs and praises him for being so dependable. Haru's praise makes Makoto blush with happiness. Inside, she squeals. He's just too cute. She admits to herself that she doesn't really care about the book. It was only an excuse to go on a date with him. Haru sees Rumiko Hotta as her biggest rival. To her, Hotta's beauty and personality feel like cheating. She worries that Makoto might be obsessed with big breasts, but believes she can win with her natural charm. Haru reminds herself of her own strengths. She's wholesome, tidy, and his cute childhood friend. She decides to use that bond to make him fall for her. When Makoto says the ice cream tastes great, Haru beams with joy, until he suddenly wonders if Hotta-sensei would like it too. He fondly recalls the time he and Hotta made crepes with whipped cream and strawberries. As he describes how Hotta got cream all over herself, he blushes hard and stumbles, insisting he's fine. Haru gasps, realizing why he turned red. Her mind flashes with the image of Hotta covered in cream, teasingly suggesting something lewd. When Makoto points out the bookstore, Haru is silently boiling with jealousy. She tells Makoto she's going to check out the cookbooks, and he agrees. As she walks away, she thinks she needs to act fast. Haru wonders how she can get closer to Makoto without ruining their childhood friend balance. She spots a magazine article about ways to create physical closeness and suddenly gets an idea. With new determination, Haru grabs a startled Makoto and drags him away, forgetting all about the books. She leads him to a row of photo booths. Makoto is confused, but Haru excitedly suggests they take pictures together. He hesitates, but she brushes off his worries. Haru complains that their only photos together are from childhood and looks at him with puppy dog eyes, asking to make new memories. Makoto sighs, realizing he's been completely pressured into it. Inside the booth, Haru cheerfully selects couple mode to Makoto's horror. She tells him to just go along with it. The first pose asks them to hold hands. Then she playfully tells him to pose like a kitty cat. Next, they stand back to back. For the last picture, she asks a blushing Makoto to make a heart shape with her hands. Seizing the chance, Haru suddenly leans in and kisses Makoto on the cheek right as the camera flashes. Haru laughs, saying couple mode was embarrassing but fun. Makoto is left dazed and speechless. Later, he wonders if Haru really didn't mind doing all that with him. A memory flashes of another moment when she was close to him, leaving him confused. Maybe her actions mean something more. Makoto awkwardly asks if Haru is just a very physical person, mentioning the photo booth and the time she touched Hotta-sensei's chest. He wonders if that's just how she acts with people she's close to. Haru tries to interrupt, but he keeps talking, saying that Hotta-sensei is also kind of touchy, so maybe it's just a girl thing. That pushes Haru over the edge. She suddenly stands up and demands to know if Hotta has ever kissed him. Blushing, Makoto admits that Haru is the only one who has. Overjoyed, she grins, while Makoto pleads with her not to show the photo to anyone. He promises to take good care of it. Later, Haru proudly looks at an enlarged poster of their photo hanging in her room. Even though the day didn't go as planned, she tells herself there's always next time. Meanwhile, Rumiko Hotta lets out a long, weary sigh. Makoto Kurabayashi notices and asks what's wrong. She says her friend Matsuri caught a cold and canceled their plan to see the fireworks. Makoto checks a flyer for the Tokorozawa fireworks show. It's today. When he suggests inviting someone else, Hotta slumps on the couch, saying she doesn't have many friends who'd come on short notice. She adds that she doesn't want to go with someone she has to act proper around. Then she suddenly brightens up. There is one person she feels comfortable with. Makoto looks surprised. She shows him a bag full of ingredients for festival foods. Realizing her plan, Makoto figures they'll be cooking and watching fireworks together at her place until night. On the way home, he tries to stay calm, but can't help worrying about her drinking. When he returns to her apartment and announces his arrival, he freezes. Hotta is wearing a yukata. She shyly says she got excited and dressed up, but had trouble fixing her hair. Turning her back, she asks him to check if anything looks off. Makoto is flustered by the sight of her bare neck and tied-up hair. He quickly waves his hands and assures her that everything looks perfect. When she offers to cook, he volunteers to make the festival food instead. Soon he serves a full spread of homemade dishes, yakisoba, okonomiyaki, and more. Hotta happily digs in, saying everything tastes amazing and pairs perfectly with her drink. Makoto worries he made too much, but she insists she'll finish it all. He can only marvel at her appetite. As the fireworks time nears, Makoto feels nervous but says nothing. The clock shows only 5 minutes left. He tries to stop her from drinking more, but she laughs it off, saying she's just a happy drunk. Suddenly, Hotta gets an idea. She wants to repay him somehow. Holding up an ear pick, she says she'll clean his ears as thanks for helping her today. Makoto protests, but she takes it personally, asking if he thinks her ear cleaning is unpleasant. Her drunken boldness grows, and she complains her legs are going numb, urging him to sit by her. Smiling warmly, she gently pulls his head onto her lap. Makoto freezes, overwhelmed by the situation. She teasingly asks how her thighs feel, and he nervously admits they're soft. That backfires. She frowns and says he was supposed to deny it, not agree. A timer beeps, and she stands up quickly, saying it's time for the fireworks, and rushes to the balcony. The fireworks burst across the night sky. Standing on the balcony, Makoto Kurabayashi remembers this is the main event. He watches in awe, completely mesmerized by the colorful display. Hotta asks if he thinks the fireworks are beautiful. Looking up, she smiles and agrees. It really is beautiful. Then she turns to him and says she wants to watch the fireworks with him again next year. Makoto freezes, flustered by her words, but Hotta quickly adds that they should invite their friends Matsuri and Konishi-san too. Realizing she meant as a group, Makoto blushes in embarrassment. When Hotta declares she wants another beer, he hurriedly tells her to drink some water instead. Later, in the kitchen, Makoto is chopping ingredients for dinner. The rice cooker beeps, signaling that part of the meal is ready. He thinks Hotta-sensei should be home soon. Just as she bursts through the door, arms full of shopping bags and a bright smile on her face, she excitedly tells him about her successful shopping trip, listing all the cute shoes, skirts, and blouses she bought. Leaning close, she eagerly asks if he wants to see her new clothes. He hesitates but agrees, suggesting they wait until after dinner. Hotta refuses, saying she bought the smallest sizes on purpose to stay motivated and doesn't want to try them on with a full stomach. She insists that fashion must be shown from head to toe, including her new shoes. After Makoto spreads newspapers on the floor as she asked, Hotta announces that her fashion show is starting. She tries on each outfit, showing off details she loves while Makoto watches, both impressed and slightly overwhelmed. Finally, she steps out in her last outfit, a tight-knit dress with black tights. Makoto is momentarily stunned. Hotta twirls and asks what he thinks. Inside, Makoto is flustered by how good she looks, but he manages to say she looks great and that he really likes it. Hotta explains that she's usually self-conscious about short skirts, but her new boots give her confidence. Makoto then notices that the heels are nearly 5 inches high and asks if they hurt. She admits they do, but says, "Beauty is pain." Trying to prove her point, Hotta does a quick spin, but her ankle twists dangerously. Both of them yelp in surprise and pain as she falls. Makoto rushes over. Hotta winces, saying she can't move. She explains that putting weight on it hurts too much, and Makoto immediately realizes it needs to be iced. Ignoring her protests, he apologizes and swiftly lifts her into his arms. Hotta's eyes widen in shock. She's completely stunned by the sudden gesture. Makoto carries her carefully to the sofa, reassuring her that they're almost there. Snapping out of her daze, Hotta flails and begs him to put her down, but he sternly tells her to stay still. He gently applies a cold pack to her ankle and assures her it doesn't look too bad. When he asks if she's hurt anywhere else, she hides her face and mumbles that she's fine, just embarrassed. She admits no one has ever carried her like that before. Makoto apologizes again, but she tells him to stop. It only makes her feel more flustered. Suddenly, Hotta sneezes. Concerned, Makoto asks if she caught a cold. She laughs it off, saying it's just the chilly weather, and asks him to fetch her winter sheets from the closet. She tells him they're on the top right shelf. As he reaches for the door, Makoto realizes he's never opened this closet before. The moment he does, a mountain of boxes and random clutter crashes down on him. The loud noise startles Hotta, who calls out in alarm. Seeing him buried under the mess, she gasps and asks if he's okay. Sitting up, Makoto groans and asks how she managed to stuff so much inside. She sheepishly apologizes, saying that packing tightly saves space. Makoto sighs and says this isn't Tetris. While sorting through the pile, he finds a small memories book from her 4th grade class. Curious, he asks if he can take a look. Surprised, Hotta warns him it's probably boring, but he insists. He opens it and reads her childhood profile aloud. Birthday, December 10th. Blood type, B. Then he stops, stunned at one entry. Her dream back then was to be a career woman and a bride. Makoto blurts out in shock, "You wanted to be a bride?" Hotta jumps, and he quickly apologizes. She admits that yes, that was her childhood dream. More than anything, she just wanted to have her own family. Hotta explains that her parents worked overseas most of the time, so she was raised by her grandmother. Though she had fun with her, she often felt lonely. That loneliness made her long for a warm, close family of her own. Hearing this, Makoto finally understands some of her past behavior. She says it was a dream she came up with, together with her grandmother, 16 years ago. In a flashback, young Rumiko Hotta sits at her desk, frowning at her homework. She's supposed to write about her future dream. Her grandmother notices her frustration and gently asks what's wrong. Hotta says her classmates wrote things like idol or nurse, but she doesn't want to pick something just because everyone else did. She says she knows she's cute, but making it as an idol is hard. Then she sighs and asks why everyone needs to have a dream when they've only lived 9 years. Her grandmother chuckles and rephrases the question, what kind of grown-up does she want to become? Looking at a photo of her parents, young Hotta says she wants to be like her mom, passionate about her job. But then, softer, she admits she misses her. Her grandmother listens quietly as Hotta smiles and says she loves her mom. Then, with excitement, she adds that she also wants to marry someone like her. Someone kind but a little strict, who's good at cooking and cleaning. Most importantly, they must be able to make pickled vegetables like grandma's. Her grandmother laughs and hugs her, calling Rumiko greedy and saying it might be hard to find someone who can make pickles that well. But she promises that someday Rumiko will meet someone wonderful. Back in the present, Hotta suddenly gasps, breaking out of her memories. Makoto leans closer and asks if she's okay. She apologizes, saying she got lost thinking about her grandmother. Makoto smiles warmly, saying she must really love her. Hotta nods, her expression soft. I do, she says. She starts to say who she wanted to marry back then, but her stomach growls loudly, making her blush. She laughs and admits that her stomach always growls when she thinks about pickles. They decide to take a lunch break. Makoto lists the turnip, carrot, and cucumber pickles he made, and Hotta cheers with excitement.